Well, I'm going to proceed on the assumption that somebody can see me. Anyway, the topic today, it was mentioned to me that our social media team has been getting questions about the federal bill. So I'm going to give you an update about the bill and some background. This has been quite a learning process. Okay, I now see some comments, so people are watching. Good. Okay, hi guys. Hi. All right. This has been an incredible learning process for us. We started out knowing nothing. I don't know how much the people who are watching know about the process. So first, let's talk a little bit about at least my understanding of the process of getting a bill passed. Every session, if the bill does not become law, it dies, and we have to reintroduce it in the next session. So we've done that for a number of sessions, and this is normal for a bill to build momentum over time. So, but this session, we are in by far, the best position we have ever been to get the bill passed this session. So I'm going to explain to you why. First, let me talk about the process a little bit. The normal process is called regular order. And so the bill gets introduced, you get people to co-sponsor, as many of you are familiar with making that call to Congress to ask them to co-sponsor, and you hope that the committee chairman, who is all-powerful, the committee chairman decides what bills will be heard in committee. So you hope that the committee chairman will arrange for your bill to be heard. And then they schedule a hearing, and at the hearing, people can testify, pro and con about whatever it is. There can be some discussion, and then that meeting ends. And then later, they may schedule or may not schedule the next step, which is called a markup. And in the markup, the legislators debate and can suggest amendments. So somebody who doesn't like the bill could try to weaken the bill with amendments, that kind of thing. And so you have that process. And at that meeting, the committee votes on whether they're going to pass it on to the next step. If they vote yes, which is what happened last session with our bill in the House, then there's a process that's called it's reported out. That means they send it out of the committee, and if the bill has not been previously evaluated for its financial implications, it has to go to the Office of the Management Budget, where they do an analysis. They try to look into the industry, learn about it, and figure out what the bill is going to cost, both to the government, if agencies have to do things, and to industry if it affects industry. Now, we had that process done last time, and it took months. So last session, that created months of delay. But since the bill hasn't changed, my understanding is we don't have to do that again. And once you do that, and there's a certain threshold, that threshold goes up by the CPI every year, and it's something like $165 million. If it costs less than $165 million, you're good. There isn't any more discussion about it. If it costs more than that, you've got a problem. And fortunately, we are under it. So then it goes to Nancy Pelosi, who is the Speaker, and Steny Hoyer, who is the Majority Leader. And they are the ones who then decide whether it goes to the floor. And the issue there is, a bill going to the floor often takes hours, because they can talk about, get debate, people want to speak. So it can take a long time, and just the roll call, if they require a roll call vote, that takes a bunch of time. So they have limited spots. They're only in session doing this for a portion of their time, and there just are so many spots. And so more bills get reported out of committee than can possibly go to the floor. So there's this triage that what's called the leadership, Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, have to do to decide, well, which ones do we find time for and which ones not. And that's the normal process. That's the process we went through last time. There's another process which is called suspension, which means suspension of the rules. And it's generally used for bills that are not controversial. And under suspension, the debate is limited to 20 minutes each side, so it takes a much smaller time slot if a bill goes on suspension. However, in order to get suspension, in order to prevail or get your vote, get a yes vote, instead of a simple majority, you need a 2/3 majority. So there are 435 members of Congress, so that's basically 290 members. It's actually 2/3 of the one who show up for the vote. So if some don't show up for the vote, the number you need is less. And as the session comes to an end, there's something that they kind of refer to as the funnel, where there's all these bills sitting to go, and just this narrow space to put them in to get some number of them to the floor. And so at the end of last session, we were kind of sitting there in that funnel. And by November, when we weren't getting indications, we really thought, well, okay, we're out of luck. And then through a set of circumstances that I don't fully know, suddenly, in the middle of November, around Thanksgiving, it was announced that our bill would go to the floor on suspension on December 3rd. So we were going to get to the floor, but we needed a 2/3 vote. And at the time, we had 230 co-sponsors. Those are people who signed up in advance and said they vote for it. What we didn't know was, could we get the remaining number that we needed who hadn't signed up but would vote for it? So that was a very, very tense night as you watch them call the names, and they have little columns where you see yay and nay. And we ended up getting just a few votes more than the 2/3 that we needed. So the bill passed the House on December 3rd. Now again, it dies at the end of the year, but this year we were able to reintroduce it earlier than ever before. The prior session, we had beaten all records of introducing it by getting into the House on February 26th, all right? So in this case, we got it into the House on July 11th. So we already have, today is roughly the day, it's the day after, the 27th? It's the day after we would have introduced it in the first session. So as we sit here at that point, because we got it introduced on January 11th, we already have 130 co-sponsors. So we are way ahead of the game, and coming off it passing by 2/3 is a huge credential for the bill to, for this session. So now the question will be, does it go through regular order? Do we have to go through the committee process again? Or would it go on suspension? The best way to get it on suspension, which would mean it could happen much quicker, would be if we could get up to 290 co-sponsors. Because once we get there, then it kind of becomes a no-brainer. Once you have 290 co-sponsors, it will pass by 2/3, and the case can be made to send it for suspension. And it could go on suspension without that many, like it did last session, but the 290 just makes it so easy to do. So that's why, I know for years we've been asking, and you've been so good about calling Congress and asking them to co-sponsor. We just need to do that. We are now so well positioned, we just need to do that now more than ever before. And, we've seen cases where one constituent, and we always want to be polite and professional, but we can be persistent. And we've seen cases where one constituent, particularly in the House where you have smaller districts, will contact the office and say, look, I'd really like you to get back to me and let me know. And if the legislator has a problem, let me know what his concerns are, and maybe we can address them. And if you get something back like that, you can always contact me for help in addressing it. You don't have to worry about knowing everything about the bill. You can say, let me get back to you. So 3 weeks later, if you haven't heard, you can contact again and say, hey, I don't want to be an ag, but I asked you if we could get back to me. Could you let me know if the boss has some concerns about this? And just keep doing it. We've had cases where finally they said, okay, we have to address this. So, I would encourage, to the extent you can, that kind of behavior. Now, in the Senate, we are also much better positioned than any session before. We have, for a number of sessions, we did not have any Republican co-sponsors in the Senate. There are fewer senators. It's more difficult. The last session was very significant because we got 3 Republican co-sponsors on the bill. And one of them was not reelected, but we have 2 who we expect will, again, be co-sponsors. But what's more important than that is it is enormously more helpful for the bill if it is introduced on a bipartisan basis with, from the beginning, a Republican and a Democrat introducing the bill. That's what we've always had in the House. In the House, right now, it's Representative Quigley and Representative Fitzpatrick. And so it hasn't been announced yet, and so it's not final, but we believe that the bill will be introduced probably within the next few weeks in the Senate with both a Democrat and a Republican on the bill, which will be a much better kickoff for the bill. So the bottom line of this is what I said from the beginning. I mean, I don't know how to give you a percentage or a number, but we've just never been this excited about the prospects of the bill passing this session. So I hope that answers questions. Let me now, I can't talk and read these things flashing by, but I don't know, can I go backwards and see? Oh, it flips backwards. Let me see if I can, it's just people that are watching, that's nice. Someone asked if there are any Louisiana co-sponsors in there. I don't know every state, but if you go to congress.gov and just type in HR 263, okay, then you will come up with a page and there's tabs. And one of the tabs is for the co-sponsors. You'll see that we have 130 co-sponsors. When you click on that and you can sort it, it'll actually tell you over the left-hand side how many from each state, and then you can actually sort it by alphabet or by state or however you want. So that would, and I would encourage you to bookmark that page and follow and you can sign up to get alerts when there's changes. So for instance, Friday we got 2 more co-sponsors, 1 Republican and 1 Democrat in the House, and so I got an email saying there was a change to the number of co-sponsors, and that triggers you to go look. So I would encourage you to do that. It's kind of exciting, as we're adding them. And so, let's see. Howie, this is good. Howie is handsome and intelligent. Carole is a lucky lady. I need to make a screenshot of this one. Thank you very much. I'm not sure I believe you, but thank you very much. And yes, Corinne makes a note here. It's really helpful if once they co-sponsor and you see someone co-sponsor that's from your state, to just send an email saying thank you so much, because it reinforces and makes them more enthusiastic. And to the extent we do have to go to another session, which we hope not, we hope it'll pass this session, it really helps them to know that people cared in their district. Yes, be kind and respectful when you're doing this. It does you no good to piss these people off, okay? When I went to law school, our dean was a brilliant woman, and she said, listen to the judge talking. It's the fish telling you how to catch him. And she also said, you can't argue with the judge. The judge gets the rule. Well, when you're talking to the aides, you need to win them over. You can't bully them. They're just going to shut you down. So you need to be charming, is the way I would put it. And that doesn't mean you can't be persistent. Good, both your reps are co-sponsors. Where's Carole today? So I'm not good enough for you? You need Carole? How about a little variety here? All right, let me go back down and see any new ones. please understand this is the first time that I've ever looked at these kind of comments trying to do this. Yes, one of the very significant things on the Republican side is the fact that the National Sheriff's Association and the Fraternal Order of Police and a number of state associations, and right now, this session, the National Sheriff's Association has agreed to get much more active involved, and they're trying to help us get other state associations, because one of the things every senator asks is, how does this bill affect my state? Now, one of those ways is if we can get sheriffs in the state. That has been very helpful. But let me explain to you, and this it's easy to understand the animal welfare issue of the cubs being mistreated and the adults, if they survive being in horrible backyards. And it is pretty straightforward to understand. There's not just a public safety, but a first responder safety. And we have examples. Tim Harrison is a former police officer, became an animal control officer, and now teaches at a place in Texas that law enforcement people go to learn how to deal with these animals. And it's very articulate. And he's got these examples from his history where there was a situation where firemen came to a house. Most of his examples are Ohio, where he lived, and a tiger leaped out of the window over the fireman. And fortunately over the fireman as opposed to onto a fireman. A case in Texas, Hurricane Ike, back in 2008, there was a community where there were very few safe buildings. One of them was a church. People flocked to the church to get out of the hurricane, and somebody had put their lioness in the church, so people could not get into the church to escape the hurricane. And so there are examples like that about the law enforcement. The issue with the tiger in the wild and how this bill affects it is that there are Asian countries that come to these international meetings, like they're called CITES, where the 180 nations are members and they make decisions about the trade in endangered species. And these nations argue that they want to raise tigers like cattle in tiger farms and slaughter them and legalize the currently illegal market in tiger parts like rugs and teeth and what are called tiger derivatives like tiger bone wine, which is supposed to have some virility enhancement ability, and these alleged medicinals that are supposed to do all kinds of different things that even the official traditional medicine community has put out there. Look, these things don't work, but people have believed it for generations, and they believe it, and so they want to buy them. They want to legalize this, and they say, well, if we raise them in these tiger farms and supply the market, people won't need to poach. And that's not true for two reasons. One is the wild tiger will always be viewed as the premium product, okay? And so if you expand the market, you expand that portion that wants the premium product. Secondly, it's a lot cheaper to poach a tiger than it is to raise one for a few years until it's big enough to slaughter. So if this happens, if this is legalized, it will decimate the tiger in the wild. The tiger will go extinct within a matter of, not very many years. When our State Department goes to these meetings like CITES and tries to line up other nations to join us in resisting this when this is proposed, the Chinese impair our credibility or challenge our credibility successfully, I think, because they correctly say, hey, at least we know where our tigers are. You guys in the US don't even know where they are. You don't know how many of them are going into the international trade. So you're demanding from us something that you don't enforce yourselves. And they're right. We don't know where all these tigers are in backyards. Now here's a little irony for you. Carole and I worked very hard. There's a whole story behind this that someday maybe I'll tell in one of these, or maybe it'll be in my book. But we worked very hard to get an email from the State Department confirming this, that we could show to legislators. And in that email, there had been efforts to try to determine whether any U.S. tiger parts were going overseas from time to time. There's an organization called Traffic that had done a study some years ago, and they just couldn't find it. Well, why? You know, when things are imported into the U.S., we at least spot check for drugs or guns or other illegal things, including, you know, the massive amount of illegal wildlife trade that is attempted to bring in. Things exiting the country, there is no checking. You can go down to the post office with a box with a tiger skull in it and ship it, because, you know, we assume that it gets checked at the other end. Well, in those countries, the level of checking and the level of bribery of the people who check, makes that not a very successful process. And it's still only a spot check. There's no way to check every box that comes in to this country or any other country. So that's why they had never found any. On the day that this email finally got sent to us after months of work from the State Department, on that day, the Department of Justice announced in a press release that they had finally caught somebody, a guy in New Jersey, who had shipped 68 boxes of tiger parts and other endangered species parts to Thailand to be sold into the illegal trade. So we finally had evidence that this actually does happen. So that is why the bill, by phasing out the private ownership of people who are unlicensed and there's no tracking, that would take away this argument that the Asian countries who want to legalize the illegal trade have, because we would be able to say, we do know where our tigers are, and there wouldn't be any there wouldn't be a possibility of any going into the illegal trade. So I hope that wasn't, I say, yeah, I can see less people are watching. I must have put some people to sleep. Anyway, so that's it for today. I'll take a quick scan here. Well, somebody said my representative says he won't vote for it. Look, we're going to run into that. There are some who, for one reason or another, won't. I would encourage asking why, but if they say, there are some who say, well, we think the states should do it. I mean, there are arguments for why that's not the case. The federal government has always, you got the Endangered Species Act, the Animal Welfare Act, the Lacey Act. This is an area the federal government has always dealt with. And at the state level, if one state goes and passes a good law, it becomes whack-a-mole. The people just move to another state. So there are arguments. Look, there are some people where we just have to acknowledge they're not going to vote for it. But that doesn't mean we don't keep trying with the ones who can. And if you have, if yours won't, but you know people in other districts, something you can still do is try to educate and encourage other people in anywhere, in other states, anywhere in the country, to participate. Okay, well, we're at 23 minutes. Okay, yes. I'm going to jump to the bottom here and see if there's anything at the bottom. Wow. You guys are typing up a storm here. Holy mackerel, I can't even get to the bottom. Well, it's got to be boring watching me do this. Okay. Thank you for this. It was very informative. Thank you, Gloria. See, now I can read them because I'm not talking. All right, guys. I've been working on, I don't want to steal Carole's Hail You Cool Cats and Kittens. I've been working on it, maybe something like Hail You Feline Fanatics or something like that, but we'll keep working on it. I'm not sure I can compete with Carole. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope this was helpful.